current situation's all right?
I am, yeah. We've just gone back out of lockdown down here, so yeah, starting to get back to a little bit of normality.
Oh, you're in Melbourne.
I am, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah,
My home city. I wish I was back there.
yeah. Oh, mate, I feel so sorry for you guys at the moment, knowing that you're going through what we
Oh,
went through last year. So,
I know it's pretty hard though. You can't. My family's all Melbourne, and I just feel like a schmuck even complaining about a few weeks here after what what they've been through down there. So you know. Anyway.
yeah. Well, mate, on Streamline, absolutely fantastic film. I had a chance to sit down and watch it, and it is an amazing film.
Oh, cool. I'm yet to see the final cut, so it's encouraging to hear that it's getting some good feedback from people that have seen it. So, yeah, I mean, it was I think it was a pretty special film to make. Everything felt good, and, it was a brilliant script, I thought, when I first read it. And I've got a great team involved, so it's great to hear that it's getting well received so far.
Yeah. What was it about the screenplay that really grabbed you? Because it's one of those movies that you feel yourself get totally involved with. What grabbed you with the script?
I mean, first of all, I think it's really honest and raw. And look, I do tend to love that sort of dark side of stuff where, which the Bush brothers come into, especially in sort of film and stuff. I think it's always fun to play with. But, I mean, my background was sort of professional sport as well. So it was good to sort of see a film going into that side of the sports as well. Because, I mean, you behind every champion, no matter what sport it is, a lot of them, have stories, and it's not all peaches and roses, which in case, Boy Lane's case, it isn't. So it was that's what I thought was really important and really nice to see. It wasn't just a glamorous sporting film that, shows the good side of the life as a sportsman, or, sports star, sorry. To me, that was really, it sort of cut all the prettiness and all the fanfare, I guess, and the sporting gold that sort of everyone only really sees in Australia. You see someone with an Olympic medal, and they become an instant hero, especially in the pool. But there's a lot of it takes a lot to get there, and also then the family situations. I think it's reflective of a lot of people, in the sport as well. So it was. That side of it was just really appealing, but it was real and honest. It wasn't just a, made up, swimming story.
Yeah, I remember watching a movie years ago now called Inner Sanctuary with where Samuel Johnson played a young footballer who looked like he was going to get drafted to Collingwood, but then he got involved in the heroin lifestyle. It really made me realise that for every sports star we see out there, there's a gifted young sports star out there somewhere that has got wrapped up in life and it's put him off track. For you, coming from a sporting background, how often did you actually see that with young stars that do get railroaded like that?
I mean, it's more so. To be honest, it was like my sport was taekwondo, so it was it's a pretty low socioeconomic sport to start with. You get a lot of sort of migrant families and stuff involved. So, I mean, a lot of it wasn't, which all had very supportive families from my experience. But, I mean, you do hear of stories. I didn't sort of come across it as much, not to the extent of, like, what you were just talking about or, the abuse and stuff. But that's the thing about it. I mean, a lot of it probably happens behind closed doors. Especially not every kid's lucky enough to go to a private school with a great sporting, background and pedigree and stuff like that. So to tell a story of a champion who's come from the sort of, done it rough pretty much his whole life and, living with a single mum who's, working as a cleaner just so he can get up and go to swimming. I mean, all that kind of stuff was really, really spoke to me because it's real and it's an honest story. But, I mean, yeah, look, my experience, I'm sure that's I think that the key thing about that is that like behind closed doors, you just don't know what some of these athletes and families go through to get them there, and I think it's important sometimes to see that it's not all roses, and there's a lot more involved and especially dealing with the psychology of young kids in sport, it's sort of, you know, it's I think that's what was nice to see in this film, that it wasn't just the pressures of you know, what it's like to be a young athlete, but also, you know, having the, you know, family issues and stuff like that, which everyone sort of can relate to, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And your character of Dave ends up being a fairly interesting character because he seems to care for his brother, but also at the same time, he's almost like a cautionary tale of where his brother could end up, kind of thing. How did you view that character, and how did you get into that character of Dave?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a funny one, because on paper you can sort of, I mean, he could, when I first read it, he sort of came across quite, initial first read was a bit more one-dimensional, you know, so I think it was important that and a lot of this comes down to Tyson, the writer and the director, you know, we wanted to make sure, yeah, Dave has his flaws, and he's, you know, he's a bad influence on Benjamin, and but I think what makes him interesting is that he thinks he's doing the right thing by him.
Yeah.
And in his eyes, you know, he's been a role model and doing the best that he can. And I mean, it was important for Tyson that we sort of tried to make him not that he was more than just a one-dimensional bullhead who, you know, fucks up his brother's life. But it was that in his eyes, he was actually he thought he was trying to do the right thing. He thought he was helping him. And it was also important too to sort of use Dave as a potential of what, to sort of show, I suppose metaphorically in a way, that if, you know, Boy Lane went down that path, that's kind of what he would turn into. So it was almost like a look into the future for Boy, if he didn't get his shit together. So yeah, and we just wanted to make him. You never set out for any character. I don't set out for any character to be a likable character, and I think it's more just, I think especially with these sort of, as you could label them, bad characters, or, you know, misguided, or, you know, the baddies of the shows, I think it's also sometimes nice to find a little bit of humanity in there, because, you know, everyone who does something bad or makes it a bad decision, I'm pretty sure that they think they're doing the right thing at the time.
Yep. And how much of that characterization and backstory did you actually flesh out with Tyson to get a better understanding of Dave as well?
Look, I mean, Dave's probably someone that, you know, if I hadn't had, you know, a supportive family, you know, and then, you know, I do see, you know, that kind of sort of slip in someone's life quite, you know, especially in the Australian sort of culture. I feel like, you know, at any point in time when I was younger, I could have gone down a path similar to Dave's.
Yep.
And that sort of related, personalising that was a key. I also did a lot of work with Sam Parsonson, who's Nick, plays the other brother.
Yep.
It was really important that even though both of us didn't really have that much screen time, to be honest, that relationship was rock solid, and there was a lot of history in that. And Sam's one of my best mates, so I sort of, as soon as I read that, I straight away thought of Sam and sort of pitched him to the producers and to the director, you know, and I just knew that we would work well together, but we also had that sort of history as mates. But that was really important, and I think that also made it. We were sort of so familiar and had a rich history with those characters. I mean, we spent a lot of time together. Just we were shooting up in Gold Coast, and you spent a lot of time in your hotel rooms, you know. So we would every night we were sort of working on stuff for the next day, and just sort of finding those little nuances and familiarities with each other that sort of become second nature, that you're not really thinking about or trying to act it or whatever. And that really helped, because then, you know, me and Sam could get there and sort of just have fun and play. And although they're quite dark sort of scenes, a lot of those, we had a ball doing them, because we, you know, we're so sort of comfortable and familiar with those characters and the relationships. You can sort of fly a little bit then when you're filming.
Yeah.
Not think about it, and that's where you find sort of these, you know, moments that you hadn't rehearsed or you hadn't thought of. So, and you know, Tyson sort of also gave us the freedom for that as well, so which was really nice.
There's the really powerful, without giving too much away, there's that really powerful scene there between Dave and his father in the kitchen. How do you prepare for a scene like that seems so emotionally draining? And then how do you shut down after that as well? Like, how do you shut off when you go home that night to turn off what's happened from a scene like that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a good chat I had sort of a preconceived idea of how that would go, and it was probably way more of a toxic sort of masculinity-driven revenge type thing. And not long before we shot it, I was having a coffee with Jason Isaacs, who plays Rob, the father, and we were talking about that, and we were just saying how it's almost, what would be really interesting is to, because I was sort of struggling with the lack of physicality in it. I felt like Dave might be the kind of person that would go in and, knock his father out, that kind of thing. And what we found was really interesting was that you've got a man, Dave, who's so traumatized by the events of his father that even in his presence, the most he can come up with is standing at a distance throwing food at him. There's still that kind of trauma and pain hanging over Dave. And I mean, at the end of the day, he probably just needed a big hug from his dad.
Yeah.
He sort of went in there, guns blazing, and I think it comes across a bit more interesting that it's almost like he can't actually do what he set out to do, and he has to sort of, be. And I think that drives into the next part of the scene, which, I mean, without giving anything away, that heavily drinking kind of stuff. There's a real trauma there for all the boys that went through that, and that sort of ripple effect of, I don't know, I feel there might have been a bit of embarrassment on Dave's behalf that it didn't go the way he could. He couldn't actually physicalise anything.
Yeah.
He was so, and that kind of makes it, I think that's more interesting than just sort of going in there and starting throwing haymakers.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know, I think those kind of things, I tend to get on roles quite often with guys with anger issues and that kind of stuff. So to me, that's sort of the, you sort of get to unleash a bit of a beast that you'd never really tap into in your real life. So it was, but yeah, I mean, they're actually quite funny, some of those scenes to film. Like, most of the time, those heavy ones are the ones that everyone's having a laugh on when they call cut.
Yeah.
Like in the midst of it, a piece of carrot, would land on Jason's nose and stuck there for the entire scene, so we'd have to shoot it again. So there was funny things like that. That, I mean, they tend to be, where you get all the laughs and that with the crew and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. I mean, so some of the scenes, like the scenes with Laura Gordon with the mum, were a bit more confronting for me, as in the way he sort of speaks to her and looks to her. I found like those are the ones that you sort of got to take a bit of care afterwards as well, and because to me they're quite that way Dave sort of speaks to his stepmom's pretty terrifying, and that sort of leaves you with a bit of a yucky feeling. So those kind of things, and me and Laura spoke at great lengths with that sort of stuff and worked out what we were going to do and where they were coming from, so we're both comfortable with each other and that kind of thing. And that's really important too, so that, when you're doing things like that everyone's on the same page and they know exactly what's coming, whether it's physical or mentally sort of driven towards someone. I think if you're on the same page, especially the two actors, that you know what's coming and you've sort of spoken about it that way, it's a bit more of an enjoyable experience than being too surprising them too much with too much,
Definitely, yeah. Jake, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly with our...
that's all right, mate. I've got time, so if you do need to go over for a few more questions, that's all right.
Awesome, yeah. No, I had two I really wanted to ask. First of all, Tyson as a director, I found this to be an absolutely amazing film. What was Tyson like to work with as a director? Because he looks like he's going to have a big future ahead of him.
Oh, he's amazing. I would, I spoke to him just recently and fishing for anything else that he's working on back in LA, because I think he's an absolute talent. Like, he knows how to talk to, like, he just got the best out of us. I mean, his script is so beautiful, it's written. He's got a really calm presence. and he worked like with Michael Latham, who DOP'd it, who's stunning. Like as a cinematographer, he's going to have a huge future, I reckon. And those two together work so well. But yeah, look, I think Tyson's got a huge future. Like this is his first feature, and he's only young. And I've already told him I'll put my hand up to play with him again on anything. So yeah, he's an impressive young filmmaker.
Definitely.
He's cool head and calm and knew what he wanted. It was good.
Awesome. Well, mate, to finish off, I wanted to ask, as you said before, this is a very, very important film. So what would you like to say to people out there before they head along to see Streamline? But also, what would you like them to take away from this film as well?
I think go in with an open mind. A lot of people might be going in looking for an Olympic, champion sporting film. Be open at the fact that it's quite a in-depth drama attached to it as well that just so happens to be set in the world of swimming. So that's probably the one thing. I don't know. Look, just enjoy it. And, I think it's be an eye-opener for some people to sort of see the reality of what some of these, all we see is the gold medals at the Olympics and the world records getting smashed in the pool like we're seeing at the moment. But you sort of forget about the human element behind it, what got them there, and the parents involved, the coaches, and it's not all smooth sailing. So I think that's a really important thing for people to see and understand, especially in a country that holds sport and sporting achievements, so high. I think it's important to see, what it takes to get there and what some of these people go through, because it's not all Olympic gold medals.
Definitely. Well, Jake, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today, and again, congratulations on being part of such an amazing film.
Oh, thanks, mate. I appreciate it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing it myself.